You know that feeling when you wake up after a full night's sleep, but somehow you're already exhausted before the day even begins, like you've been running a marathon in your dreams, except you haven't moved at all. No amount of coffee or scrolling through your phone seems to shake off this heaviness that sits on your chest like an invisible weight. That's not laziness, and it's not in your head. What you're experiencing is emotional exhaustion, a very real form of fatigue that doesn't show up on any medical test but affects millions of people who look perfectly fine on the outside while feeling completely depleted on the inside. Emotional tiredness is as legitimate as physical exhaustion, except instead of your muscles aching from a workout, it's your mind and heart that are worn down from constantly processing feelings, managing stress, navigating relationships, and trying to meet expectations that never seem to end. Your brain uses approximately 20% of your body's energy, even though it is only about 2% of your body weight. And when you're emotionally taxed, that energy consumption skyrockets because your mind is working overtime to regulate emotions. Suppress feelings you think you shouldn't have, maintain a cheerful facade when you're crumbling inside, and juggle all the invisible mental labor that nobody sees but everyone expects you to handle perfectly, unlike physical tiredness where you can point to the workout or the long day of manual labor that caused it. Emotional exhaustion sneaks up on you through 1,000 tiny cuts, the difficult conversation you keep replaying, the decision you're avoiding, the resentment you're swallowing, the worry that cycles through your mind at 3 in the morning, the constant vigilance of trying to keep everyone happy while neglecting what you actually need. There are hidden reasons behind this relentless emotional fatigue that most people never consider, starting with the fact that you're likely carrying emotional burdens that aren't even yours to carry. Absorbing other people's moods like a sponge, feeling responsible for fixing problems that you didn't create, and functioning as the emotional support system for everyone around you without anyone asking if you're okay. You might be living in a constant state of hypervigilance, always scanning your environment for potential threats or conflicts, never fully relaxing even in moments that should be peaceful. Because somewhere along the way you learned that letting your guard down isn't safe. People pleasing is another massive energy drain that masquerades as kindness, but is actually a survival mechanism where you have learned to prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own authenticity, saying yes when you mean no, laughing at jokes that aren't funny, downplaying your own needs, and contorting yourself into whatever shape seems most acceptable in any given moment. Decision fatigue compounds this exhaustion because you're making hundreds of micro decisions every day about what to wear, what to eat, how to respond to that text, whether to speak up or stay quiet, and each decision depletes your mental resources like tiny withdrawals from an account that never gets replenished. You're also probably experiencing something called emotional labor, which is the invisible work of managing feelings, yours and others, remembering birthdays, mediating conflicts, noticing when someone seems off and checking in on them, maintaining social connections, performing all the nurturing tasks that keep relationships and households running but are rarely acknowledged or appreciated. Technology has added another layer to this exhaustion because you're never truly offline, constantly available to respond to messages, consuming an endless stream of other people's curated lives that make you feel inadequate, exposed to global crises and tragedies that trigger your empathy and concern but leave you feeling helpless, and maintaining multiple digital personas across different platforms which fragments your sense of self. Unprocessed grief and trauma sit in your body like stones you are carrying in a backpack that gets heavier with each passing year, whether it's the loss of a loved one, a painful breakup, childhood wounds that never healed, or the collective trauma of living through a pandemic and watching the world change in ways that still do'n't feel real. Perfectionism is quietly killing your energy reserves because you're holding yourself to impossible standards, believing that if you just work hard enough or become good enough, you'll finally feel worthy. But the goalposts keep moving and you keep running on a treadmill that goes nowhere. Many people are emotionally exhausted because they are living lives that look good on paper but feel hollow inside. pursuing careers or relationships or lifestyles that others told them would bring happiness, yet they wake up each day feeling disconnected from their own lives, like they are playing a role in someone else's story. The signs that you are emotionally burned out are often subtle at first, but become undeniable over time. You feel irritable over small things that normally wouldn't bother you. Snapping at loved ones or feeling irrationally angry at minor inconveniences because your nervous system is already maxed out and has no capacity left to regulate your responses. You might notice that you can't focus or concentrate the way you used to, reading the same paragraph multiple times without retaining anything, sitting in meetings while your mind drifts, or starting projects with enthusiasm only to abandon them because you simply don't have the mental bandwidth to follow through. Emotional numbness becomes your default state, where you don't feel particularly sad or happy, just flatlined in a gray middle zone where nothing seems to matter very much and you are going through the motions of life without actually experiencing it. You withdraw from social connections. Not because you don't care about people, but because the thought of putting on a smile and making conversation feels like climbing a mountain. So you cancel plans, ignore texts, and retreat into isolation, even though part of you knows that disconnection will make things worse. Physical symptoms often accompany emotional burnout: chronic headaches, digestive issues, muscle tension that never releases. Getting sick more often because your immune system is compromised by stress, or experiencing unexplained pain that doctors can't diagnose because it is your body's way of expressing what your mind won't acknowledge. You might find yourself crying at random moments over things that seem trivial, or conversely, being unable to cry even when you desperately want to release the pressure building inside you. Sleep becomes either an escape where you're sleeping 12 hours and still waking up exhausted, or an elusive luxury where you lie awake ruminating about everything and nothing, your mind racing with thoughts you can't shut off. You lose interest in things that used to bring you joy. Hobbies feel like obligations, favorite shows seem boring, and you can't remember the last time you felt genuinely excited about anything because your capacity for pleasure has been dulled by chronic stress. Here is the frustrating truth that catches most people off guard: rest alone doesn't fix emotional fatigue. Which is why you can take a vacation or sleep for an entire weekend and still feel completely drained when you return to your normal life. Physical rest is necessary but insufficient, because emotional exhaustion isn't caused by a lack of sleep. It is caused by unresolved feelings, unmet needs, boundary violations, suppressed authenticity, and the accumulated weight of living in ways that don't honor who you actually are. You can't sleep off the resentment you feel from always giving more than you receive. You can't nap away the anxiety of living with uncertainty, and you can't binge watch your way out of the disconnection you feel from yourself and your life. Rest only addresses the symptom, not the root cause, which is why so many people find themselves stuck in a cycle of pushing through until they collapse. Resting just enough to keep functioning, then pushing through again until the next inevitable crash. What you actually need isn't just time off from your responsibilities, but permission to feel your feelings instead of managing them, express your needs instead of minimizing them, and make changes to your life instead of just coping with circumstances that are depleting you. The healing of emotional fatigue is slow, unglamorous work that doesn't come with before and after photos or linear progress, but it begins with acknowledging that what you're experiencing is real and valid, not a personal failing or a sign of weakness. Start by getting curious about your exhaustion instead of judging it. When do you feel most drained? What situations or people consistently leave you feeling depleted? What are you doing or not doing that contributes to this tiredness? And what would it look like to honor your limits instead of constantly pushing past them? Practice the radical act of doing less, which goes against everything our productivity-obsessed culture teaches, but is essential for recovery. Say no to commitments that don't genuinely serve you. Stop optimizing every moment. Allow yourself to be unproductive. And challenge the belief that your worth is determined by your output. Create boundaries around your energy like you would around your time or money, recognizing that not every problem requires your input, not every emotion needs to be processed in real time, and not every person deserves access to your emotional bandwidth. Find safe spaces to express the feelings you've been holding, whether that's through therapy, Journaling, talking with a trusted friend, creative expression, or simply allowing yourself to cry without needing a good reason, because unexpressed emotions don't disappear, they just go underground and continue draining your energy. Reconnect with your body through gentle movement, breath work, or somatic practices that help you release stored tension and trauma. Remembering that your body keeps score of everything your mind tries to forget, and sometimes healing happens not through thinking but through feeling and moving. Address the practical sources of stress, where you can. Maybe that means having difficult conversations you've been avoiding, making changes to toxic situations, seeking support for mental health challenges, or restructuring your life in ways that create more alignment between your values and your daily reality. Cultivate small moments of genuine pleasure and presence, not as another item on your self-care to-do list, but as practice in remembering what it feels like to be alive rather than just functional weather that ease. Savoring your morning coffee, stepping outside to feel the sun, listening to a song that moves you, or spending 5 minutes doing absolutely nothing without guilt. Be patient with yourself, because emotional healing doesn't follow a schedule, and there will be days when you feel worse before you feel better, when old patterns resurface, when you question whether anything is changing. That is all part of the process of unlearning years of conditioning and building a new relationship with yourself. Surround yourself with people who see your worth beyond your usefulness, who don't require you to be perpetually strong or happy, who can hold space for your complexity without trying to fix you or minimize your experience, because healing happens in connection with others who allow you to be fully human. Remember that emotional tiredness isn't a problem to solve as quickly as possible, but a messenger telling you that something in your life needs attention, that you've been running on empty for too long, that the way you've been living isn't sustainable, and that you deserve more than just surviving from one day to the next. You are not broken for feeling exhausted, even when you have done nothing physically demanding you. Re a human being navigating a world that asks you to be constantly available, endlessly productive, perpetually optimistic, and always fine, and that's an impossible standard that would drain anyone. Your emotional fatigue is not a weakness, but a sign that you have been strong for too long without support, that you've been carrying too much without acknowledging the weight, and that it's finally time to set some of those burdens down. Even if you don't know yet what your life will look like when you do, the path forward isn't about returning to who you were before you got tired, but about becoming someone new who knows their limits, honors their needs, and builds a life that sustains rather than depletes them. And that journey begins not with a dramatic transformation, but with the quiet, courageous act of admitting that you're tired and that you deserve rest that actually restores you.